is Sunday. It's not just Sunday, it's also 7:10, which upside down means Britney should not be in Russia and should not be declaring herself guilty. But we're going to get
Yeah.
into that later because today's all about oil, right? No?
Yeah.
No,
Yes.
it's about cannabis. It's about health.
It's about dabs.
It's about dabs. It's about time we jump into the rotation.
Marijuana in my soul, marijuana in my heart.
Seriously, we cannot celebrate 710 unless we expressly note the fact that what little that Brittany Griner had in her suitcase was caused smuggling is totally a political move that means absolutely nothing in regards to
It
the
was.
plan itself.
I heard it was a CBD pen. I heard it even wasn't weed. It was
Free
CBD,
Britney.
right? It's
Britney.
considered weed in Russia, but CBD here.
Yeah, well,
Or, I don't know.
All right.
Either
anyways,
way, she shouldn't be in a fucking prison.
yes, and we, however, are where it all began in Ybor City at 17147th Avenue in Ybor City, where it all began. This is the rotation. I am Gary Stein, your political director and master of public health, and in charge of all the health-related things as well as political things. To my right is Carlos. I don't have any meat in my Cuban sandwich. Ermita, and
Veggie Cubans.
who is also our master of business administration, who wants to talk about the supply and demand aspect of the cannabis industry.
Coincidentally, Veggie Cubans, great business. Great fucking business.
Yeah, you're just happy he doesn't have salami in him. And of course, over to my right, in the secret square box over here, we have Chriscato coming to us from above the Beltway, where he hits him below the Beltway, and also a master of public administration, and he gets the people on the top who are screwing up the bottom.
Well said, Gary. Well said.
Sounded weird.
So, Chris, what have we had going on? Because you were not on this last week. It's because you were baked, kind of.
Well, I was traveling the Eastern Seaboard all the way up to Maine, which is a legal state, and had the opportunity to step up there and sample and review what they got going on in Maine. I have to say, definitely like Maine's products a lot better than New Jersey's. Last time I went to a legal state and sampled what they have, so that it's interesting to see what each market's willing to bring. But just to update folks on some news. If you're living in the DC area in the District of Columbia, one of the things that recently happened, Mayor Bowser's signed legislation coming from the DC City Council allowing adults to access medical cannabis dispensaries if they do a self-certification process, which what this means is that you no longer need a doctor's recommendation in DC to access their medical cannabis dispensaries. If you're a DC resident, you can actually go through a self-certification program, and it allows you to basically self-certify in order to get your medical card to go into the 7 registered dispensaries that they have in DC. So it's an interesting and novel concept, and I dig it.
And they also signed, is it an ordinance now in regards to blocking of anybody losing their jobs or not being able to get a job because of cannabis as well?
Yes.
Something that Eleanor Holmes Norton had talked to us about.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that we want to see here in Florida. Another update coming from around the states, California's Governor Gavin Newsom signed budget legislation late last week that reduces certain marijuana-specific taxes. California has some very high taxes, and it's been a very big criticism on the Newsom administration and in California in general for their adult use system. This legislation specifically eliminates the cultivation tax on licensed growers and caps any further increase in the excise tax for the next 3 years, among some of the changes. Some of the analysis coming out of California show that in certain parts of Cali, the effective tax rate could be as much as $92 per ounce on top of what you're already paying. So this is definitely, important that, there's substantial tax cuts in order to reduce the demand for folks going to the illicit market. I mean, here in Florida, we have a similar issue where folks are paying upwards of over $70 for an eighth because of the way, all the fees and everything is being assessed on top of the fact that you're spending a few $100 for a doctor's recommendation. So, cutting taxes and letting folks self-certify would definitely be 2 ways to improve Florida system that we're seeing coming out of other states.
Now I'm going to ask our guest about this a little bit, but it looks like the mayor of the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, seems to be pushing a presidential bid. Does that look like that to you?
Well, I would say this much. Every governor across the country right now is jockeying for the opportunity to make the case to come on the stage at a national level. Whether or not anybody's going to primary or whether or not Joe Biden's going to run for a second term is still up in the air. I'll tell you this much. The midterm elections are here right now. Right now is primary season. In the state of Maryland, they're already voting for their primaries. And in the state of Florida, we'll be voting for primaries, coming up here shortly next month in August. So I think it's vitally important that you get out there and you understand who's running in these primary elections, because the vast majority of people that we see in November are going to be ones that are being elected in this primary. And so in the grand scheme of things, you got to get out there. You got to pay the primary candidates. And we're actually going to have a candidate on the show later on in our new candidate segment that we're bringing to you that's running locally in the St. Pete area. So, again, I think it's important. Two other things just to update folks on when it comes to the news. Two studies have recently come out. One in the journal Acta Neurologica Scandinavica, which actually shows that patients with Parkinson's disease are reporting symptomatic benefits from using cannabis. And we know that because our own Health and Human Services Department has a patent on using cannabinoids for treating and relieving Parkinson's disease. But more than that, there's a study that came out in the Journal of Clinical and Experimental Neurophysiology, Neuropsychology, that showed that cannabis use is not predictive of lack of motivation in adults. And that's something that we've always heard the anti-drug crowd scream about is, cannabis demotivates you. And so I thought that is definitely interesting. A team of researchers at Oregon State University assessed motivation and self-reported apathy in a cohort of folks who smoke cannabis 3 times a week or more versus folks who don't smoke at all, and they could show no significant difference in the groups. So in the
grand, do like 30 dabs before I leave my house.
Yeah, and the reason I bring this up is because there has been a slew of anti-cannabis propaganda coming out of Fox News, whether it's on the national level or on the local level, and they're trying to tie, recreational marijuana use to increases in ER hospitalizations. If you've seen, Fox News on the cable, they've been trying to tie the motivations of mass shooters to the legalization of cannabis. And frankly, it's all bullshit. That's bullshit. And it's disgusting.
It's weird, man. I doing a little bit of PR work for both Normal and Chillum, man. I'm like learning more and more how the media works. Yeah. And like, honestly, it's strange, man, because like Chillum has had a lot of success on local Fox affiliates, right? But you tell me that this stuff happens, right? And to be honest, ABC was the most slanderous news channel for us.
Well, again, it's a whole idea of diversion. They don't want to talk about guns, so they're going to talk about all the other things that they can talk about. Yes, we do have a mental health problem in this country. Yes, we're terrible in regards to taking care of those folks who have mental health. But mental health, it's in and of itself, is not the problem. It's somebody who has an illness or just hate in their blood, and a gun. The gun changes everything. It's like that guy who was in that show, that movie Grand Canyon. He said, I have respect for you because you have a gun. You didn't have a gun. Well, I don't have no respect for you. The gun changes everything.
How long? Because this is like a pretty long argument going on here, saying that cannabis. This is the first time there was any type of yellow journalism on cannabis was saying that it made you go insane.
It was originated, by the way, in Mexico in the 1880s. So this has been going on for a while.
How long is it going to take for these people that know nothing about weed to just be like confronted with somebody that smokes weed and ends up being smarter than them, or like, you know what I mean? Like how long can this go on? Like, this has been going on for over 100 years now, that cannabis makes you go crazy.
Well, again, this is the need for more research, like the research in regards to motivational syndrome. All we need is a concrete evidence, and research is expensive, and research needs to be improved. So if we get those things moving forward, we can get rid of some of these ridiculous lies that go through. I mean, my gosh, they actually showed pictures of that guy over in Uvalde, and in Arlington, saying, well, yeah, he had. They showed pictures of him cosplaying, and saying, yeah, he's definitely a cross-dresser. He's definitely insane, and obviously he was high on marijuana when he got so upset with the whole world that he wanted to go ahead and start indiscriminately shooting at old folks and kids.
Well, the spurious connections are the bad part about it when it comes to the research, when it comes to the science. Gary, you just articulated a totally rational argument. You have to understand that in politics, rational arguments do not win out and facts do not win out. What wins out is your ability to control the mob's opinion, which is why we see the yellow journalism coming out on cable news in the grand scheme of things. And it's really about pushing people to an emotional state to overrule their own reason. But what I want to do is really go past the news and bring on our guest, because I'm so excited to have him back on the show. I think our guest is probably one of the best people who can articulate the struggle of cannabis, because he's been on the front lines throughout the pre-legalization period, photographing and interviewing interesting people up until where we are today. So let's bring on our guest, Malcolm MacKinnon.
Oh, and Patty, mahalo for that statement. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be on the show. I don't see my face yet, so bring me up. Hey, I just wanted to say one very, very quickly. Marijuana is the most studied plant in the universe. There have been more studies on marijuana than any other plant. So we don't need more research. It's out there. Yeah. It's being ignored. So we don't need any more research. I mean, how much more research can you possibly want?
Exactly.
So just wanted to say that right off the bat.
Malcolm, we're trying to bring you on. I'm just trying to see if your camera's activated.
At this point, it's ignorance. Right?
Hold on a second.
Yeah. Well, I got to get myself put together here.
At this point, if you don't understand marijuana, in my opinion, it's ignorance, because the information's there. The information's readily available. And we've had people like our guests who we'll see eventually.
I mean, don't present yourself out in the world like Herschel Walker. Don't look ignorant.
There you go. Hey, what's up,
that, folks?
There we go.
All right.
Yeah, but we missed the ceremonial loading of the joint. Sorry about that, Malcolm. It's so good to have you back. Whereabouts are you right now?
Well, I'm up at my mom's house in Connecticut. She's about 96 years old, so just hanging out with her for the weekend, and that's why you see all these nice trees out my back, out the back,
and a couple of Amazon parrots too, apparently.
just hanging fake birds is all they are.
So that's great. You flipped us the birds. That's good. That's wonderful.
So I'm pretty sure you overheard us. I think Kano did a great job introducing you, but I mean, we're talking about just the misinformation that's out there and whatnot, and how long it's been going on. And that's the thing. And I can understand why you're so frustrated with us talking about it, man, because you've been spreading the right information for so long. What piece of yellow journalism kind of infuriates you the most? What do you think is the most damaging?
Laura Ingraham on Fox News has been absolutely disgraceful. I mean, I can't stand the fact she wears a crucifix around her neck. I mean, good Lord. And, blaming mass shooting on marijuana use is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, did she notice that all the mass shooters happen to be white? That had everything to do with it? They have to, that these are loners, that these guys are absolutely disaffected human beings? No, they smoke marijuana. Well, I'm not taking a gun and going out and shooting anybody. And most people who smoke marijuana aren't either. We smoke marijuana in order to feel better, to feel right about the world. This is absolutely the worst thing. And believe me, it's all part of the GOP Republican conservative agenda. They're going after gay marriage. They'll go after the trans people. They'll go after pot. They're going after everything. We have a real problem in this country right now.
Already gone after women.
People even are aware of it, that there is a very, very underground and not so underground movement to remove a lot of our freedoms, and it's all being orchestrated by the conservative movement, who have been enabled by Donald Trump.
Now, you were a photojournalist for High Times and editor in chief for a while as well, and we posted one of the great covers you had of Cheech and Chong. When was that picture taken?
I took that in 2008 at the Troubadour in Los Angeles, and it was great because they were reuniting at the time. And I said, I'm going out to LA to make sure I get this. And so the press showed up at the Troubadour that day in mass, huge amounts. And so I took that shot. I was the very last press person to get to them because I was pulling out real pot for the photo shoot. And There was no air conditioning in the Troubadour that day, so it was rather hot, and Tommy and Cheech were getting a little bit feisty.
We gotta thank you. You're the reason we had Tommy Chong on our show.
Oh well, Tommy and I've I've been known for over 20 years. Shot him a number of times, interviewed him a number of times.
So
nice to know somebody on that basis.
Now we haven't got the picture up yet, but they're both sharing this bong that's on this huge pile of bud.
Yeah.
And I have to ask you, what happened to the bud after that picture?
Oh well, we gave Tommy and Cheech some. I had to give it back to the people who I was renting it from. It's not like I go out there with hordes of money. Like, here, I got to buy 2 ounces, 3 ounces of pot. You rely on the kindness of strangers when you're a pot journalist. Here we got the girls from Broad City.
I love them.
They came up to the office, and they were absolute neophytes on the nature of weed. They didn't know where to hide it. They'd never taken a dab, and so we gave Ilana a dab, and she absolutely bent over. She'd never gotten so high in her life.
That's crazy to think of, because you watch their show and they're like all about smoking pot.
Yeah, it was central to the script.
Yeah.
Some of the things they were telling me, they were saying, if I take pot on the plane, I always hide it in my private parts. I said, no, you don't have to do that. What are you doing?
Jesus
no, absolutely not. So I give them.
Hey, the Lucas brothers! Wow.
Yeah, the Lucas brothers. They were in the middle of. I can't remember what I shot them for, but I still don't know which one is which. That's the problem.
The other guy is the one on the left.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's the one with the hat on. But they were not great guys.
But this one was great. The Iron Sheik.
Hey, the Iron Sheik, man. That takes me back to my childhood, watching him wrestle Junkyard Dog.
Yeah, well, that was the funny thing. I came back to the office that after I interviewed him, and I just had a short interview with him, took some shots of him, and people went nuts. You should have gotten a full interview. This is the Iron Sheik. I'm like, maybe it's a little bit past my time or before my time. I don't know, but I didn't realize that the popularity of the Sheik. Nice guy, and boy, he really spoke out positively about pot and how he used it throughout his career. And a great guy. And also the funny thing is, here he was the first Iranian champion, and he always played the villain, because this was at the time of the hostage takeover in Iraq and in Iran, and so he was very, very he enjoyed being the villain. It was
now
great.
there's a lot of cannabis use in the wrestling industry, in the WWE, etc. Because of they take so many lumps and they have so much pain.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of them are dying right now from tympanic injuries.
Yes.
So Gary, I'm glad you brought that up, because in 2017 we had the opportunity. We actually, as Central Florida Normal, co-sponsored with the Weed for Warriors Project a celebrity wrestling match for charity. We had the Nasty Boys there, Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Matter of fact, before he passed on, Rocky Soulman Johnson, who's Dwayne The Rock Johnson's father, was there, as well as Macho Man's brother. And that was just one of the greatest things we had the opportunity to do at the Central Florida Fairgrounds back then. And it was really cool to, it felt me real nostalgic going back to my childhood and watching those guys wrestle. So Malcolm, seeing that those pictures brought me back. And so, yeah, from elder millennials, yeah, we love those wrestlers from the early 80s.
Jesse Ventura, he spoke out for pot. He's a longtime pot smoker. A couple other, Rob Van Dam, obviously, huge stoner. So it's widespread in wrestling. Listen, these guys need recovery as much as anybody else. They are professional athletes. Yes, it's not real, but I remember asking Jesse Ventura about that. So tell me, is professional wrestling real? He goes, well, what do you think? You mind if I pile drive you? Mind if when you want to dive off the side of the turnbuckle? You want to take a body slam from me? You see how real it is.
Yeah, Andy Kaufman learned the hard way, didn't he?
Yeah.
Well, Malcolm, I'm glad you brought that up, because there's been a social media firestorm between, just even in me and members of my own family about this whole Brittany Griner issue. And I've been telling people, it's like, some people are like, oh, well, she said anti-American things. She doesn't stand for the national anthem. And I was like, well, if her demanding police accountability, in your mind equates that she should sit in jail for pot. And I'm sitting there like, wait a minute, you yourself smoke pot. That's the most hypocritical thing to say someone should sit in jail for pot when you yourself do it. Like, just admit that you're racist and you don't like her because she's a black lesbian. And people just, their minds blow up when you call them to the carpet on that. And they'll find every excuse to say, no, it's about patriotism. I'm like, no, it's not. It's really not.
There's a possibility. I mean, I've heard that floated in the media that it might have been planted on her. But look, it was a bad choice on her part, if it was a choice, and it's pure bad luck. And nobody deserves this. And what annoys me more than anything else is that we have so many people still in jail for pot. Why are we so concerned with only Brittany Griner, for Christ's sake? You know, there are other people in jail. And the other day I posted on Facebook, Leonard Peltier, of course, who I've been an advocate for a long time. He's been in jail for 17,000 days, you know, and he is innocent. Brittany Griner declared herself guilty, but we all know that guilt means nothing. She's being exploited by the Russians, and it's really become...
And being exploited by our own side for political points.
Yes.
I mean, because in the grand scheme of things, if we're going to fight to get Brittany out of jail for weed, how about Joe Biden release all the weed prisoners in America?
Absolutely, absolutely. It goes without saying. How can you advocate for Brittany Griner and forget about Americans? And this is a real problem. We give all this money to all the other foreign countries. Meanwhile, older people can't get health care. They have to pass up their medications because they don't have the money. They can't get dental work. Our values are all backward. By the time you get to be an old person, you are, good luck is what they say to you.
Yeah,
Malcolm, one of the things that really struck me when we had Tommy Chong on the show, he said when he was in federal prison, he encountered guys who would sit there who were getting ready to get out and plot what felonies they could commit to come back, because in federal prison, they were getting some of the best health care possible. And out on the streets, they would die without it. And that's just sad that we live in a country where you can get better health care in a federal prison than you can being homeless. And it encourages you to essentially reoffend just so you can get access and live a healthy life. That's just sad that we live in a country where that's a choice.
This is a country, and they're always telling we had trillions for the COVID breakout. Everybody got a lot of money. This country has money. We can do these things, but we have incredible opposition to any kind of change in this country right now. And it's, this pendulum is swinging toward the right now, and it's very, very disturbing.
So,
and by the way, I think Biden is not doing a good job in regards to this aspect and in regards to a lot of aspects right now. And I just got to throw it out right there. With all due respect, I'm talking to you right now, Joe. Joe, we love you. You're very special, but I think it's time for you to go home. I don't know where I heard that before, but I think it's apropos.
What's your alternative, Gary? Do you see some Democrat on the horizon who's going to change things? What's the alternative? I mean, I agree that he is not the strong Democratic leader that we'd like, but we need a firebrand. We need somebody. And AOC, I love her, but she's not really palatable for most of the population simply because she's a Latino woman. Well, of course, a Latina is a woman, but
well, what do you think of Gavin Newsom? Since obviously, first he started to attack DeSantis this last week, which was very interesting. Because I love when everybody attacks DeSantis anyway. But a lot of folks in California are more concerned with his corporatist side, which was the same situation we were dealing with in regards to Bill Clinton too.
Well, there are a lot of. Obama was a corporatist too. I mean, come on. I mean, look at the banks all got bailed out during the recession. The banks get bailed out. The hell with everybody else in America. So listen, it's not just the Republicans. We have a lot of people. People are craving change in this country. They want universal health care. They want to be their liberties back. They want access to abortion. Most of us feel this way, like 65, 70% of us. And here we're being led by a corrupt Supreme Court and Republican politicians who are Trump followers.
I mean, in part, I kind of like Kamala Harris moving forward. I think she's so pliable.
Is she palatable to the rest to the electorate? That's the question.
Well, that's that electability thing that they always seem to throw out, and people actually vote on people whether they're electable or not, as opposed to whether they're competent or not.
Yeah.
Which is a big problem.
Right.
Well, Gary, we had Charlie Crist on the show a few weeks back. He's running for governor in the primary election. He seems to be racking up union endorsements. He's got the party establishment behind him. But one of the things that really matters is if you're someone who in the past has made mistakes when it comes to policy decisions, you have to be able to be willing to reverse them and reverse them in a strong manner. Now, for some people, they consider that a flip-flop. Charlie, when he was Attorney General, they called him Chain Gang Charlie. He was throwing people in jail, and now he's this guy who's for, gay marriage. He's this guy that's for pro-choice. He's this guy that's for home grow.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm bringing it up because you mentioned Kamala Harris.
Sit here and be quiet, but it was, sitting next to him. He just, we brought up Brittany Griner to him. And like, you remember it was such like a genius political move where he was like, oh yeah. Well, who did she play for? Oh, you don't know? Hey, oh, by the way, I helped get Britney Spears out of her conservatory.
Good pivot, right?
Yeah. And, and like, as much as I don't want DeSantis in his seat anymore, I don't think Charlie is the right guy.
Well, I mean, that goes back to what Gary was saying about Kamala Harris. It's like, this is someone who, as a prosecutor, put people in jail for weed. It's like, so we're going to need her to make a very big 180 on her previous past policy decisions to make her palatable and believable as a candidate. And that's what I'm going back to my point originally. It's like, to Malcolm's point, who is the one that can step up? Because these establishment candidates are failing miserably when we look at their records.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah. Well, I think he's going to fail us. I think he's saying what we want to hear. I think he's a flip-flopper. And I think, honestly, Nikki Fried is the only way to go for Florida.
Well, I do think that we are going to need a new governor in order, if we're ever going to have adult use here in the state of Florida, and they have a regulatory system that is appropriate.
I guess Charlie Crist isn't going to be back on the show.
Well, he might, who knows? But Charlie, if you're listening, my wife's name is Monique. Okay,
yeah. Not Kathy.
Not Kathy.
that was something I was like, oh, why did he just call Monique Kathy? Because we were talking about Kathy Jordan, and he had a slip up. So I guess you can't be sharp all the time, right?
So I'd like to switch gears here.
Yeah, let's get back to this.
Pretty hardcore, but
can't help it. Can't help it.
So I'm a fan of the Clerks movies, and Clerks 3 is going to be coming out soon, and check that out.
Oh yeah, Kevin James. Yeah, Malcolm.
No, Kevin Smith.
Kevin Smith. My bad.
Yeah.
I get my fat guys confused sometimes in Hollywood.
No, I photographed Kevin here. This is in his Hollywood backyard. And this became the cover for the October 2001 issue.
Nice.
I shot him in the backyard, and I shot Jason Mewes on the East Coast, and the art director placed him on his shoulder. It was a very famous cover.
Yeah, I saw that.
Unfortunately, it bombed because 9/11 happened when that cover was released.
Yeah.
I remember when I shot Kevin Smith. There was a pile of pot in front of him, and he goes, "Is this real?" And I said, this ain't Hollywood, man. This is real stuff. So I gave him a bud. He wasn't much of a pot smoker then. Now he's a huge advocate. I guess it changed his life. He finally realized what the fuss was all about.
But still, he does look a lot like Jack Hare, at least in that shot with the beard and everything. Yeah. I had to look twice, although his beard wasn't long enough.
No, I met him at a Champs convention about 15, 16 years later, and I introduced myself, and he was so skinny at that time. He lost a ton of weight, but such a nice guy. Those guys, I'll tell you, Jason and Kevin Smith, they do such a good job with their fans. They pose with every single one of them. I mean, these guys know what it's all about. They're using social media to its greatest advantage, and these guys sustain their popularity. There's no doubt about it.
I follow Jason Mewes on Instagram, and he's definitely all over the place doing good things. Yeah, and he's definitely somebody who's an inspiration and turned his life around.
Sure did.
Yeah.
I remember when I interviewed Kevin Smith, I said, so are you going to do another movie? He goes, nope. I go, why not? He goes, not work with Jason again. And I said, really? And I said, yep.
Oh, no.
He was very, very tight-lipped about it. But I knew Jason, he had his heroin problem. And when I photographed him, I knew that he was doing some bad stuff during the midst of a photo shoot. But he's turned his life around. You can
see it in his face.
Now, the good news is the heroin use is down. The bad news is that fentanyl use is up. So,
well, here's another Joe. We were talking about Joe Biden. Here's
Joe Rogan.
Yeah, our favorite Joe Rogan. I don't know what side of the fence he's on. Sometimes I think he's being stabbed by the pickets through his gut.
Well, I think he talks. He's a big talker. He loves to talk. And with people who talk all the time, they say stuff that's stupid sometimes. That's all there is to it. They don't censor themselves. But he was very, very nice. I photographed him with Eddie Bravo, who's a martial artist. Joe is a martial artist as well. And I did a little feature on them in High Times. And Joe, they had the the hash out in front of him or the concentrate. And I said, "You mind? I take a shot of you like this?" He goes, "No, go ahead." So that was kind of cool. I mean, he had no problem being posing with a bong and concentrates. He was great.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite Rogan podcast episodes is him arguing with Eddie Bravo because Eddie Bravo is a flat earther, and those two just go hard at each other for like an hour.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. When I heard that about Eddie, and he's such a cool guy. Eddie, come on. He's an anti-intellectualism, anti-history, anti-science.
Yeah,
flat Earth. I mean, come on, folks. Jeez.
And that's more prevalent in our society. You know, it's crazy that people like Snoop Dogg sound like more rational voices in our society than other folks, you know?
Now, this one surprised me because it actually shows that Snoop has gray roots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
The guy to me does not age.
Yeah, this guy is true. I took that shot in 420 in Denver, and he was very, he was, everybody wanted to talk to him and stuff like that. He was back, and people had to be ushered in. And I was just waiting. I was all there, in this room for an hour, just kind of like watching everything go down. Finally, I walked up to Snoop. I need you, to say something. So I filmed him on video for our Cannabis Cup in Denver. And he just turned around. And he was great. He just said something really cool about pot, about high times, and this, that, and the other thing. Very, very nice guy. I mean, that's the only time I ever met him. But he was certainly nice enough to me.
We definitely want him on the show. So, Snoop, if you're listening, and I know you're not, would you mind waking up Martha and telling her to bringing you over here?
I tried to interview Martha. What's her name? Martha Stewart.
Martha
I tried
Stewart.
to interview her. She said no. She's hanging out with Snoop, but she wouldn't go into High Times. And there are a few people out there. Bill Maher is another guy who's never been in High Times. And as a matter of fact, he denigrates High Times. Bill Maher is an elitist stoner. All right. He is not somebody who's really necessarily on our side. So I'll just throw that out there. He always made fun of High Time, made fun of stoners and stuff like that. I mean, it's just, the type.
Yeah. We've gotten criticism from some local radio hosts and DJs in Tampa for our big blunt floats and trying to do our advocacy work. So we know exactly how what you mean by elitist stoners.
Yeah, exactly.
So here's somebody that I always thought was a super cool pothead. Boom, Redman. He played at so many Cannabis Cups. He played in Amsterdam. He was great. I mean, I shot a whole sequence. So I said, all right, let's go through a series of shots like that. So he was great. And I interviewed him for High Time. We were at the Safe House for the Cannabis Cup, and I just shot him here over by the pool. Such a nice guy, though, and people just love him. I remember when he was at the San Bernardino Cup a few years back. He dove into the audience and he's being carried around by the crowd. It was fantastic. I mean, the guy is totally, he knows his people. So
doesn't need a hype man.
I'm gonna share a personal story with you guys, and I'm sorry, Papi, if you're listening, but you're part of this. But my Papi, when I was a little niño, he banned me from watching the television show Married with Children. And the reason why he banned me from watching it was because he didn't like the way that it depicted in women and how they treated women and things like that. And then all of a sudden, now my dad's voting for the guy that grabs women by the pussy. And here's somebody from Married with Children who's
that's right.
Bud Bundy.
Bud Bundy. Yeah, this was great. I mean, he was so nice. He was in the middle of filming a movie it was called Dirt Merchant. It went straight to video, and Jenna Jameson was in the movie of all things. But anyway, he was on the set, and I shot this. And then I get back. We got Bud Bundy. This is going to be a great cover. And we had a new publisher. No, not Bud Bundy. Let's put Godzilla on the cover.
What?
You're like, are you kidding me? We have Bud Bundy, Bud from Married with Children, holding buds, and you want to put Godzilla on the cover?
Yeah, loser movie.
I remember this publisher also. I remember I got David Crosby in an interview. He said, no, we don't want him. So instead, he got Larry Ratso Sloman, who I'm sure no one knows unless you live in New York City. That was the problem of working with High Times, is you had a lot of people who were just plain idiots. I'm sorry. They were. There, you had a lot of smart people, but you had a lot of people sometimes in control who you had to deal with. It would just drive you out of your mind. I mean,
sounds like Hollywood. Like you got people in charge who don't actually connect to regular people, and they write these things in a vacuum.
Yeah, I remember people always ask me, "What was it like working for High Times?" I go, "Not what you think."
Yeah, well, High Times seems to parallel the zeitgeist of the cannabis movement in the first place. I mean, here in '71, and all of a sudden went Schedule One. I know a lot of people out here who weren't even a bong rip in their parents' eye before they even got conceived. But it happened that everything switched over at that point in time, where it all of a sudden became illegal. And as we move forward, there were people who stepped up, like Dennis Perone, and those other folks who went ahead and changed the opinion. And so we went from an underground movement, and then slowly this above ground, supposedly legitimate movement started taking over, and the corporatists started moving in. And then things started changing. They started telling us what our culture was, as opposed to letting us have our own culture that we've already built.
Right.
You see
Well,
that?
High Times went through similar things with the Times. At one point, they wanted to get away from pot altogether. This is 2003, and they nearly killed the magazine. So there's and in during the 80s, I mean, it was Cocaine Central at High Times, and then in the late 80s, we ran back to pot and started to rebuild things. So we went. High Times went with the times as well. And I remember when we were doing Hemp Times, you couldn't even mention marijuana. Now, I was working for both High Times and Hemp Times simultaneously, but don't even bring it up. And I remember when the PR person went to the New York Post for an interview, and she did the interview and she talked about hemp and stuff like that. But of course, the New York Post wrote about hemp is also marijuana. And the people who own the company got furious. Now, what are they supposed to do? She didn't write the article, but they wanted to make sure that hemp, this was really horrible. I mean, who was buying hemp anyway? Stoners. Those were the one who really, really liked it. And so suddenly, let's not appeal to the stoners. Let's try to appeal to a whole new audience who knows nothing about hemp. So it was problematic a lot of times working for
I've always looked at political movements, especially you can see it a lot nowadays, where especially in the corporate cannabis movements, where a lot of times it shuns potheads. Like I when we were campaigning for United for Care, we were told not to wear pot leaves on our person. I've worked for companies that have told me not to laugh when I'm talking to media, because I sound like a stoner when I laugh. You know what I mean?
It's just funny because you sound like a stoner when you're not laughing too.
We went through similar things.
Well, it's like, embrace these people. These are the people, you got them. You got these people already. These are the people that already have decided that marijuana is good.
Well, now and then we get letters to the editor, like complaining about I don't think Cheech and Chong are really right for the new marijuana movement. Like, what the hell are you talking about? They were activists long before you ever were, and also the people said we have to smoke responsibly, which meant you couldn't have fun. Smoke and be serious. We had remove all the fun from marijuana.
There were people in dispensaries in Florida, and that's why I brought this picture up, because people in dispensaries in Florida that were getting fired because they had dreadlocks.
Yeah, Julian Marley here. That was the one thing. One of the great things about High Times, we had so many celebrities visit the office, and so I was always immediately grab my camera when anybody came into the office. So yeah, Julian was great. He was on tour, and it was a constant thing. And we had Dave Chappelle drop by the office, before he was really a huge star, and so many people. We had
another star.
David Arquette. Shot this. I remember his publicist was bugging him the whole time. David, I don't think this is a good idea. I don't think you should be doing this. I don't like this idea. It just drove me crazy. David was like, no, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. He really wanted to be on the cover. He was very, very nervous he was going to be on the cover.
Well, did he get some of that stuff on the plate to take home?
No, we didn't give him anything. It wasn't my pot once again. No, I think we probably gave him something.
Malcolm, I've saved a bunch of photographs for the end here, just so you could take some time to really go on about them, because
sure.
I know the Native American community is a big passion of yours, and here's some photographs here.
She is gorgeous,
very pretty.
This is Rosebud White Plume. She's the daughter of Alex White Plume, who was the one of the prime movers in the Lakota Hemp Project when they tried to grow hemp for the first time back in 2000. The feds came in and came in with really high-powered weapons to seize the crop and drag it away. And Alex tried to grow pot from 2000, 2001, 2002, and the feds came in every single time. Finally, an injunction was slapped on him to stop, and in 2015 that was lifted. Now they are growing hemp on the reservation. But this was Rosebud White Plume, and she's actually standing in what they called the FBI field. This was the second
The FBI field.
They called it the FBI field because when the feds dragged away the plants, they seeded all the fields with all the seeds that were in the plants. So there's hemp growing everywhere now. So that field they wouldn't touch. They did ceremonies in that field. They felt that the FBI had tainted it. So I used Rosebud there in the FBI field because there was hemp growing everywhere.
Olivia Munn.
Olivia Munn, yes, Olivia, beautiful Olivia. This is Sakakohe Cook. This is I shot her in 1997 when hemp was just becoming, a thought on the reservation. And there was feral hemp growing there because back in the early 1900s, there was a Jesuit Indian school right there in Oglala on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And some of these plants are the progeny of plants that are 100 years old. So this one was growing it was 14 feet high. You can see how huge it was.
Was that natural light, by the way, or did you use a reflector for that?
I used a reflector.
Yeah, I gotta say, I love the brand Roar. I sell pipes for a living, my man, and this is amazing. I'm going to Champs in 2 weeks, and I will be making an order for these pipes here.
Yeah, I visited their operation in Germany.
That's
Martin
so
Brazil
cool.
is the owner, and this was just a lucky shot. There was just a cloud going over. I was in Red Rock Canyon out at a Champs convention, and I took all these pipes out early in the morning, Red Rock Canyon, which is about 20 miles outside of the city, and a passing cloud just created this.
Yeah, I thought you actually inserted that cloud. I looked at that and I said, did he Photoshop that cloud in there? Because that's just too good.
What is their facility like in Germany? Like, you guys know, if you put an order with Roar, it takes a couple of months to get to you because I mean they're making them in Germany and sending them out to you. Like, what is that like? What is that facility like?
Well, Martin's son works for him. They have some very, very dedicated artists who are all doing the same thing. They have a number of torches going. They have a little showroom with all their stuff. And Martin Brazil, who's the owner of Roar, he did a tremendous amount of research before he even got into doing glass pipes. But these truly they're like the Mercedes of glass.
Borosilicate glass.
I don't know if you guys can see it, but I mean the thickness of the glass is a big part of it. But also like the way the stem fits into the piece, the stem goes all the way down and
perfectly.
Everything about this piece is engineered perfectly. It doesn't look like much, but when you hit it, oh my God.
Purity through German engineering.
Exactly. I took this on top of the High Times offices. This is back when we were down at around 19th Street and Park Avenue. And we had these tremendous views from the top of the building.
That's cool.
So I took this up there, creeping up on the Empire State Building. If you notice, this spider only has 7 legs because some, a klutzy photographer broke one of them. So I don't know.
Oh, wow.
Looks like he's got a giant snail on his back. We have giant snails in Pasco County right now, by the way. They're 7 inches long.
Florida's a jungle. This is what Lake Mead used to look like before the drought happened. We shot this great big bong on the shores of Lake Mead. I don't know why anybody would want to live in Las Vegas right now. Good Lord. I mean, I don't know we hope to pray to God that the
there we go.
drought ends.
Well, they just approved consumption lounges in Vegas, and they're giving out actual licenses this fall. So,
yeah, that's right.
More power to Nevada.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying the drought. I mean, I don't know why anybody would want to live there. I mean, in the Southwest. I mean, it's very dire. And then here's another thing, just to get back to politicians one more time. What are they doing about the drought? Are they trying to solve this at all? I mean, when the Dust Bowl happened in the 1930s and the Great Plains was devastated, they worked to solve that. What is being done? It's a big question.
Aren't they trying to renovate the Colorado River?
Excuse me?
I think they're trying to dredge out the Colorado River, make it deeper again.
Well, you need water first.
They may have to dig.
We have some questions here in the chat about whether or not you've interacted with Robert Platzhorn.
Oh yeah, no, Robert's he came to many Cannabis Cups. He always asked him to be a presenter on stage. We gave him the Lifetime Achievement Award at Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam. Yeah, he was always a real friend of the magazine. And, he's just so articulate. He was just a wonderful guy. I've got a few shots of Robert talking with celebs, and I tell you, he's just he spent.
He even wrote some pieces for High Times at one point in time, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He spent a lot of time in prison. You spend 30 years in prison. You have cred. You can't argue with someone like that.
Yeah, more power to the black tuna.
Yeah, this is Rosebud White Plume again a few years later at the Lakota War Pony races, and she's holding another bundle of pot. And I love how they paint their horses. But she's in a ceremonial gown, and
she sure knows how to hold marijuana.
Yeah. This is another shot from Pine Ridge. This was taken in the district of Slim Butte. A lot of people have a lot of junk cars in their front yard, and it's not. People look at this sometimes and they say, "Gee, it's so ugly." They have all this garbage in the front yard. These people sell parts to their cars, so a lot of these people who have lots of cars in their front yard are sometimes making money that way. So it's no big deal. But anyway, this guy had a shell of an old car there, and he had put these potted plants in there, and it served as a windbreak. A lot of wind out in Pine Ridge, and there's lots of sun, so he had wonderful plants that were growing in that shell of the car.
That's really cool. I saw recently someone in Colorado. They had bought an old ambulance, and they were using it as a mobile grow facility.
I took that shot.
Yeah.
Don't you have that shot up here?
I think Carlos and Gary are frozen as soon as their internet comes back.
I thought they were being awfully still.
Yeah.
I took that shot. A guy named Zach Volk, a very, very nice guy out in Black Hawk, Colorado. He said, "I have an ambulance," and you hear a lot of things, in the marijuana industry, like I have this, I have that, and he took me over to his house, and it was a real ambulance. I couldn't believe it with a pot with a grow room in the back. If people are on Facebook, they can go check that out on my Malcolm MacKinnon page. But that's the great thing about being a pot photojournalist. You come across the silliest shots sometimes.
Yeah, Malcolm. Someone wrote in our comments, have you ever had the opportunity to shoot or meet with Rodney Dangerfield?
No. I think Rodney. I know he was a big pot smoker, but yeah, we I don't know if we ever approached him for an interview. It probably would have been a good idea. There were, but a lot of times. Remember back then in the early 2000s, late 90s, celebs, really, really shied away from being covered for pot. You only had a few. You had Woody, you had Tommy. And Snoop. That was about it. Those were the top celebrities who would, speak out for pot. And it was hard getting people. You could get people sometimes in the interview slot, but they were very careful about what they said. I remember I interviewed Chris Maloney for the feature interview, the guy from Law and Order SVU, and he was very circumspect about talking about pot. Even though I knew he smoked, he wouldn't really come out and say it. He said, "I don't understand why it's illegal. It's blah 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 blah." And of course, we gave him a little bag when he walked away with. He grabbed it real fast. I'll tell you that much. But,
that's hilarious.
It was tough. Then you got other people like Lewis Black, who's not a pot smoker. He said he smoked a lot of pot while he was in college, a lot, but he doesn't do it anymore. And he had no problem holding a bud, and giving it a look like that. So it was always problematic with celebrities. You're always it's one thing I always looking for I really, charged myself with finding celebrities in the interview slot. And I probably did more celebrity interviews than anybody in the magazine. But, it was always interesting when you meet with these people. Sometimes they were very, very forthcoming. And sometimes they were just pain in the ass,
Yeah. Well, going back to the early 2000s, one of my favorite issues of High Times, it actually had soldiers in Afghanistan in this huge, field of weed, and I was just like, "Wow, that is crazy. Where is that coming from?" Do you recall that issue? Do you know where those photos came from?
No, but I think I recall the issue, but I also did an issue. It might have been the same one of veterans talking about pot, and there were photos that accompanied my feature of soldiers in Afghanistan standing in weed, and one of the soldiers talked about they did, when they were on, on overnight watch and stuff like that. He said they had Oh, some kind of like a local kind of concoction that they would suck on or something like that to keep themselves awake. Yeah.
Well, we when it comes to this country, we have a lot of veterans who utilize cannabis. And so, one of the things that we're seeing to try to push through Congress right now is the ability for VA doctors to recommend it. And so, we're still running in holdups between the House and the Senate with getting that bill approved, consistently year after year. And so electing the right candidates is so important to move, pop policy forward, to move criminal justice reform forward. And we actually have a candidate here on the show that we're just want to give a few minutes to ask some questions, to interview Amaro Lionheart. Gary, why don't you introduce Amaro to our viewers and tell us a little bit, Amaro, about what you're running for. So
Okay. Well, first off, I want to say we are introducing a new segment here called Better Know a Candidate, because we need you to know exactly who is running, who is in those primaries, and who is going straight on to the general. And so you get a chance to understand where they're coming from and why you should be voting for them. And of course, it always helps to be knowledgeable when you go to that ballot box. And by the way, Malcolm, Amaro here is very, very interested in indigenous rights. So we might want to give him a talk later on in regards to all the things that you've been dealing with, because that's something that's very near and dear to his heart. Now, when I first saw his last name, which is Lionheart, I mistakenly thought he was indigenous because it sounds like an indigenous name. But in fact, and I apologize for bringing this up, but the fact is, in Italian, which is the background. God bless James Caan. He's no longer with us anymore. But the Corleones, I guess, didn't have a good basis for their name during the 70s. Go out do other kind of business. So I applaud you for moving past that. And I applaud you for going against, in Clearwater, Ed Hooper, who has had a stranglehold on that Senate seat for a while. And he has the support of the first responders and things of that sort. But he also is a very conservative who doesn't really have a lot of our ideas in mind. I might try to get him on if you can, but I don't think he's going to come. But I'm glad that you came here because you're going up against him. And obviously, you have some ideas and some thoughts. So go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience and let them know where you stand.
Sure. My name is Amaro Lionheart, as Gary eloquently put. I'm a public school teacher as well as a filmmaker, and I'm running against Mr. Ed Hooper, who is currently in the state Senate and in District 21, which is Clearwater, Upper Pinellas County, and Lower Pasco. And so kind of some of the things I'm about is basically pushing for legalization, criminal justice reform, affordable housing, and a lot of the issues that affect us and even at the national level, but working towards those things that every working class person has to deal with when it comes to high gas prices or dealing with the increase in food and obviously the rent prices going out of control. But on the criminal justice aspect, I'm getting calls from mothers across the state of Florida that are just sick of the situation that we're in. And even though I'm not an elected official yet, I'm still trying to help them out and get them through that process of trying to get some reform done.
Now, what in particular made you decide to go ahead and take the big step and run for office? Because that's a big step.
Correct. Well, what made me run for office was the very fact that as a animal rights activist and also environmental activist, I just kept seeing a lot of inaction from the people that we've elected into office, and seeing the environment trash, seeing wildlife kind of dying from various plastic poisoning and a lot of misuse in terms of what we put into the environment, destroying it and poisoning it, kind of drove me that way. But what really drove it home for me was the fact that on the criminal justice aspect, there was my godfather, whose name is Raphael. He, in the early 1980s, he was stopped in New Jersey for a simple cannabis charge. He was arrested, but then let out. Immigration then stepped in, stripped him of his permanent residency, and for the next 30 years, this poor man had to basically show up to immigration, pay an extortion fee to stay in the country, even though they couldn't deport him because he's Cuban. And then after that, he had to pay the state of Florida another extortion fee because we have to renew our license every 5 years For him, it was every year, and then they put in very big red bold letters. They put temporary. So for any reason a police officer ever stopped you, and you gave them that driver's license, they would automatically run you through the whole system and basically run you through the gauntlet. And he was harassed. He was constantly, and this poor man basically passed away before his records could be expunged because New Jersey just legalized it. And I want to make sure that people like Raphael that are currently with us basically have their names clear, and we can make sure that they're no longer discriminated or they're run through that broken system of discrimination.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I say, Amara, that's noble to want to stand up for your family, fight for civil rights. I mean, that's what has motivated many of us to step up into this, this battle here for criminal justice reform. So I wanted to ask Malcolm if you had any questions for our candidates or any guidance since you've been in this for so long.
Yeah, well, jumping into the fray.
It is a fray.
Jumping into this fray, do you worry about if you are to be elected about the compromises you might have to make? Or are you going? That's always the case. I mean, the politicians say they want to do something, then they have to make their compromises.
Well, there's certain issues that I will never compromise on. That I'm strictly, this is set, and I'm going to make them compromise by bringing in experts and bringing in community members that will basically create some type of testimonial type effect and hold their hands to actually force them to actually to our side. Meaning, for me, those uncompromising things are healthcare. I believe that every single human being in this country should have healthcare, housing, living wages, and again, this issue with criminal justice reform and prison reform. That affects every single person, whether you are Republican or Democrat, and the abuses people are going through the system. It needs to be addressed, and I really believe that we could actually make a difference in terms of actually bringing in mothers and having them testify, and then basically calling them out when they fail to act.
Yeah, well, one of the horrible things about the prison system is when somebody's in prison, especially a federal prison, they'll move that person as far as they possibly can away from their family to make it so difficult for the family to visit. And as we all know, the family is what props us up, the people who support us. And yeah, it's our prison system is really, and so many people. We have more people jailed in this country than any country in the world, and it grows bigger. And the Republicans want to even make build more prisons. Put 3 million people in jail.
Yeah, and we do have, by the way, Randy with me on the next couple of weeks, and he is now vice president of a company that actually supports the families of those people incarcerated, so that they can have a better chance of no recidivism, and also help them more comfortably as they get forward. And they're working kind of push me, pull you kind of thing in regards to the Last Prisoner project, but definitely they're making a major difference. We're hoping to see that kind of thing happen. We'll hear from Randy in the next few weeks.
Amara, it's a wonderful platform, and it's the thing is so galling is it's so common sense. Why would people be against this? Why would people vote against their best interests? That was the thing about Trump. Trump wants to get rid of Social Security, wants to get rid of health care, and people are support this guy. What are you doing? The biggest con job ever. But listen, it's small steps, and people like you who are going to step into the fray and and make a difference. I hope you can. I hope you can.
You've gotten some endorsements already, and I hope that those move you forward. Has anybody from the Democratic Executive Committee contacted you and helped you with your campaign at all?
They're actually in the process of doing that. So a lot of complaint that I hear from other candidates is that we don't get the necessary help that we need from the state or national party. I hope if they're listening that they actually get more involved, because the opposition is fully involved in every single aspect of that process. Whether you're running municipal or whether you're running federal, they have a organism in place that will support each and every one of them to get our agendas pushed. And as we see, it's a very dangerous agenda. And Correct. I haven't really heard from them yet, but I believe I'm making contact with becoming friends with Ryan Morales and Nikki Fried and others. I really believe that that's actually going to put a little bit more leverage, more weight on them to basically be more involved, especially now that everything's being pushed to the states, and we need to push more Democratic candidates into those state positions, those state legislative positions, so we can make for democracy with a lot of the Orwellian laws that they're trying to push.
Now, Chris, what do you think is the chances of us getting the head of the DEC or the DC3 to come in and talk to us?
Well, I mean, we can do the outreach. We can see if folks want to come on. I think what is the most important thing, moving forward is that as we interview candidates, we ask them straight up if they'll support our issues. So, Amaro, I'm going to ask you, if you're elected to be the next state senator in District 21, can we count on your co-sponsorship or sponsorship of our employment protection bill for medical marijuana patients?
Exactly. And we want to push this a step further. Once we actually legalize cannabis, we want to put those protections in place for all workers, even if they're federal. We want to make sure that no one can discriminate anyone for using cannabis, regardless whether it's medical or recreational. That's something you should have in terms of your privacy. And if you're using it for whatever reason, it should be something that should be honored. We don't discriminate people for using alcohol, and we don't discriminate people from using other drugs that aren't detectable.
Yeah.
In that very platform that they're.
Well, it's an admirable agenda, and I hope you get a chance to implement it. And we hope that you actually get some support behind you to move this forward, because obviously you have an uphill climb in regards to your district, which we call them the RPOF, or the Republican Committee of Florida. Really have a strong hold in that area as well. So if you can get more outside support, the better. And we're more than willing to help support you. And our audience out there is more than willing to support you. If you are interested in reaching Amaro, we have his contact information at the bottom there. Is that at your Facebook, or is that your LinkedIn?
That is my, let's see, that's my Twitter. But anybody can reach me at at or they can send me an email at info@lionheart2022.com, which is 2022. My phone number is on the bottom of the page. It's not a Google Voice number. I want to be as connected to the people as possible. So once I'm elected, that connection will never get lost, because I think that's the one biggest thing that we have with politicians, is that they get to these positions and then they forget about the people that put them there. And I would never do that. And
if you can't give money, like I said, if you can't give treasure, you can give your time. That is so important to have volunteers to move this thing forward, get the vote out, and to get people behind you. And we're more than happy to work on that. And of course, here at Suncoast, Florida, we want you to become a member so that you can also help push these agendas forward that we have set for you, that will make this program a more successful one as we move forward. I don't see adult use coming through here in Florida for a while, at least not until we get a change in governorship. And you still have to take some time to go ahead and set things up. So we have a couple of years ahead of that. We still have to strengthen that medical program, and we hope that you will consider working on that as strongly as well. And of course, if you want to get a hold of Suncoast NORML, become a membership, you can contact us at suncoastnormal.org/membership, and you will get this fabulous, where is it? Gold pin that lets everybody know at the supermarket that you have a maple leaf on your lapel. No, that you are positive about cannabis, and that you believe that this is an industry that will help people first and foremost, and we would like to move on. And as a program note, once again, we'll be continuing to give out candidates and let them talk. If you're a candidate for office right now, we'd like to hear from you and put you on the air. So give us a call, contact us. Let us know if you know somebody who is a candidate. We want to hear your opinions. We want to know, the people want to know who to vote for. And if you're in the Clearwater area, and get off the beach and go ahead and help out Amaro here. Anything else you want to say, Chris?
Well, I would say this much. We appreciate all our listeners and folks coming on the show. I'm looking forward to having more candidates on. Some folks were asking in the comments about candidates for agriculture commissioner. Just 2 weeks ago, we had on Ryan Morales, who's running to be the Democratic candidate for ag commissioner to replace Nikki Fried. So go back onto our YouTube channel, go back on Facebook and check out our past episodes. We got some great folks. This past year in 2022 has been one of the best years of the rotation with so many great celebrity guests. And I got to say, that is in no small part to you, Malcolm, for helping connect us with so many great folks. And so I just want to say again to our guest, Malcolm MacKinnon, who is an amazing photojournalist and who has been an advocate in this field for so long, to thank you for coming on the show. One of our folks in the comments here just want to know your thoughts on the Pennsylvania Democratic Senate candidate, John Fetterman. He's been very unapologetic in his pro-pot stance. Have you had any chance to ever interact with him, or what are your thoughts on him?
Never had any chance, but I'm watching him online. He's got a very clever campaign going. He's a very, very tough guy. I love the fact that he just tagged Dr. Oz for making a campaign commercial in his New Jersey mansion. Seriously, folks. Come on, look at the evidence. Who they have running against John Fetterman. I think John will win. I hope he does.
John,
yeah.
You're welcome to come in. We know you're going up against. So let's make certain that we we get you in office and we keep that state safe for everybody, because Pennsylvania got to be safe. By the way, stay out of Hartford. It's a nasty place.
Well, being where we're at right now in this country with different markets and adult use, having the opportunity last weekend to travel up to Maine, I went to Brothers Cannabis, and they had some pretty cool products, and then I went up to Sweet Dirt, which was another place that they had, and just looking at the variety of cannabis products. One of the things that they were lacking though in their adult use market is caviar joints or flour that has concentrate mixed in it, but they did have concentrate. They do have edibles. They even have these nifty infused drinks that they have 100 milligrams in one of these juices and only 100 calories in one. So all in all, I think that there's a variety of products that we're seeing in states that don't have a monopoly on or cartel structure, much like we have Florida. Because in Florida, you have very few folks you can go to. Many of them are multi-state operators, and what I'm noticing is that when you can go to these smaller mom and pop or family run dispensaries, you do have that opportunity to engage in some quality products, versus what I saw in New Jersey, going to the Botanist and seeing these big these multi-state operators not offering really quality products. And so I think that moving forward is the most important thing, is that supply and demand matters, and that access to a variety of products that folks can find that matters to them. Malcolm, before we close out, I just wanted to get your thoughts on what do you think makes an ideal adult use market?
What makes it
availability of hash, right?
I've always wanted marijuana to be like something you could grow like tomatoes in your backyard. I just think it's just not that big a deal. An adult market is where people are free to buy anything they possibly want and to act responsibly. That's one thing that our Constitution and all the people who are well, I should say this country has never really believed that adults can act responsibly. They always believe that that there must be some law to stop them from acting irresponsibly, and it's just it's a pointless exercise. So yeah, I just think all things should be available. I think I'd love to see it being sold on vegetable stands up here in New England. People grow it in the greenhouse, and then you put it on the vegetable stands, and people can buy their pot driving by. I wish it were that simple, and maybe someday it will be.
Well, and just a reminder to those folks, any political system that believes that man is not good and can't make their own decisions for themselves, that's the basis of communism and socialism.
That's
so
right.
If you support that situation, then you're not as conservative as you think you are.
Well said, Gary. Well said. Civil rights has to be at the forefront of what we're doing. That's why I'm glad we got candidates like Amaro running who put civil rights first. That's why I'm glad we have folks like Malcolm who are willing to tell the stories of folks who are fighting for civil rights. And that's what we're going to keep doing as an organization, as Suncoast Normal, is we will always be a civil rights organization first and foremost, and we will fight for your rights and the rights of all responsible cannabis users. So,
And Malcolm, we got to have you back again because hell, you got so much more you have to show us yet.
Please do. It's always a pleasure to come on your show. Thank you.
All right.
And good luck tomorrow. Good luck. You know,
You.
great candidacy I think you got going.
Happy 710, guys, whatever that means.
yes, happy International Dab Day, y'all.
All right.
Dab it out.